Getting help on Linux is one of the most important skills that you can learn as a Linux professional or just as anyone who uses Linux for any reason. It's a very important skill because there are a lot of commands on the Linux operating system. And every day, more and more applications and commands are being developed, and commands that already exist are having more and more options and arguments to them that are being added and developed to add functionality to pre-existing commands. And as you'll start to see throughout the course, there's absolutely no way that you can remember all of these arguments to all of these commands. You may not even remember a lot of the commands, but that's okay. You don't need to memorize every single command and every single option that you use while you're on a Linux operating system. There's a reason for that. There's different types of help you can get on the Linux operating system. They come in three main ways: the man pages or manual pages, info pages, and documentation that's stored in the /usr/share/doc directory. And depending on the application developer that created a particular command or application, they may or may not include well-documented information within user share doc or through info pages, but almost everything will have man pages. And so that's what we're going to kind of focus on the most. Man pages is where you're going to go. It's kind of a one-stop shop for any and every command you're going to run on the Linux system in order to understand what options you need to use for a given situation. And there's several different sections of man pages. Each section provides a different type of information for different types of things, whether some of them have more information that are targeted towards programmers. Some of them have information targeted towards like a system administrator that's trying to configure a service. There's three of them that we're going to be more focused on, and that is Section 1, which is shell commands. Section 1 basically covers all commands that any and all users on the system can use, basic commands on the system. That's probably the most important one, is Section 1, which is shell commands. Section 5 is file formats, and that's used mostly for getting information related to configuration files. So you're trying to reconfigure SSH, the SSH daemon, and you don't really know how to do it. So you just do a man 5 on sshd_config, and you can see information related to that. And the last one is Section 8, and that's administrators commands or administrative commands. And that's going to cover all your commands that usually an administrator would be using and not your typical average user. When you man something, it's going to open it up. Behind the scenes, it actually runs this command called less. Less is a command we call a paginator. Essentially what it does is it allows you to see the output of something one page at a time. Some man pages are thousands of lines long, and if you were on a console where you didn't have a mouse or a scroll bar where you could scroll up and down, and you just catted thousands of lines out to the screen, you're not going to be able to read it all fast enough. So what a paginator does is it shows you the output of a file in one page, and then you're able to use the page down key or the up and down arrows in order to read it one line or one page at a time. And so that's called a paginator. And there's a few different shortcuts that you can use within the paginator that will make your life easier, like being able to search for specific keywords within the man page instead of scrolling down one line at a time trying to read every single option. Also, another thing that we're going to look at is going to be the tat-k option for the man command. This is also known as apropos. It's a French word, and there's actually a command called apropos, A-P-R-O-P-O-S. It's not spelled how it sounds. There's actually a command for it, but man will actually allow you to use apropos just using the tat-k option. And what this essentially does is you can pass it any keyword you want, and it's going to search for any and all man pages on the system that contain or reference that keyword. And this is going to be really useful for when you don't know what commands you need, but you have an idea of what you want to do. Then you can use keywords related to what you want to do to try and find a command that does what you need to do. So let's go ahead and take a look at how to get help on the Linux operating system. So the man command. If we just type the command man, put in our white space, and the argument we're going to give to this command is the word bash. Now I use this to show you an example of a man page that has an extreme amount of content. If we use the page down key, we can go down. If we use the page up key, we can go up one page at a time. Similarly, you can use the arrow keys to go down one line at a time or go up one line at a time. This view that we're currently looking at this in, this is what's called the paginator, or the less command. This also allows us to search for key pieces of information within here by typing in /, and you'll notice in the bottom left corner of the window, the / appears like it's on a command line. Now, if we just type a word that we want to look for instance, say we're looking for a TAC-R option, we can then press enter, and that will search for the first place where it finds a TAC-R. Now, if that's not what we wanted, we can press the N key, the lowercase n key, to go to the next instance of the string TAC-R that we searched for. And we can keep doing that all the way throughout the man page, looking at every single instance that it finds. That is what I was looking for, is the TAC-R option there. If we want to go backwards, we can press Shift N, and it'll go backwards. So if I get to what I'm looking for and I accidentally pass it, I can go backwards by holding Shift and pressing N again, or N, and go backwards. If we want to quit, we simply just press Q, and it will quit out of the man page. The next thing that we want to cover is the TAC-K option, or apropos. If we actually do a man on man, a little bit of inception, and we do a / TAC-K to look for the TAC-K option, next, next. Here, we can see what that option means, TAC-K. It also gives us the ability to do a long format option, which some commands will support and some won't. So in this case, TAC-K is equivalent to using the option TAC-TAC apropos. And it says that this is equivalent to apropos, and it searches the short manual page descriptions for keywords and will display any sort of matches. If we use Q to quit out of that, we can actually man apropos and see that's exactly what this does. If we look here in the description up top, it searches manual page names and descriptions for keywords. But we don't really have to use that command in this case. We can just use the TAC-K option for the man command. So say we wanted a calculator to do some basic math on the system, but we didn't know what a command was or an application name for a calculator. We could type man space TAC-K space and then just type the word calculator. This returns a few different options: BC, an arbitrary precision calculator; DC, similar. What we're looking for here is the GNOME calculator. This is a graphical calculator. We're using a GNOME desktop environment, which is, GNOME is just the application or the type of graphical user interface or GUI that we're using on this system. And that is the calculator that comes with it. So if we wanted to use that calculator, we could just type GNOME TAC calculator, and it would execute. Don't worry about those errors there. We could also do a man on GNOME TAC calculator to look at a man page on that calculator. Another example, say we wanted some sort of calendar on the system. We could type man space tac k space calendar, and we could see that it returns a few different things that have the word calendar within the description. Now, this doesn't always mean that it's going to do exactly what you think it's going to do. For instance, this command diff time, this computes the difference between two calendar time values. That's not exactly what we were wanting. It only returns it because it has the string calendar within the description. So you got to read those and pay close attention to what it actually does. If we type cal, that actually prints us a small little calendar there showing us exactly what day it is today. The last thing I'm going to talk about when it comes to man pages, which is primarily what we use it for most of the time, is how to use a specific command. For instance, the ls command here. If we look under synopsis, this is typically where it's going to tell us how to execute the command, what options are required, what arguments are required for that command, and what type of argument is required. It's important to note, and I'll highlight these things here, these dot, 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 those dot, dot, dots mean one or more. So at least one or an infinite amount. The square brackets, anytime you see square brackets like this, like we see here, that means that that argument is optional. It means you do not have to provide that, but you can if you would like to. So for this particular example, there are 0 arguments required for this command in order for it to work. However, if we wanted to, we could use one of multiple different options. We could use one of multiple different options down here that will change the functionality of the command. And then we can also use ls, which is really just used to show the contents of a directory. So I'll show you what I mean. We can use ls in our current directory. If I type pwd or print working directory, it'll show us we're in /home/student. So if I type ls with no arguments, it works. It tells us the contents of our current directory. But I can also say ls tag l, which is going to give us a long listing of the contents of this directory, which will show us things like permissions and ownership of the files, modification times of the files, and other various information. Or we could type ls tac l on another directory like /etc/ssh. And there we're providing 2 different arguments because we are listing the contents of another directory other than where we're at. So without any arguments, ls will just assume that you just want to list the contents of the current directory that you are located in, which is why it doesn't require any arguments. So those are 2 important things to understand. Primarily that anytime we see square brackets, that means that that argument is completely optional. And if we see dot, 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 that means you can provide one or an infinite amount of that of the option that precedes the dots. To just show you one last thing here.